Welcome to Wired to Lead, the podcast where neuroscience meets leadership. Hi, I'm Julia Lefevre, and each week we're going to explore how our brains impact our behavior and how we can rewire our brains so that we can lead with clarity, confidence, and impact. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to welcome Tricia Cooper. She is the Director of HR at Prime Capital Financial. This is a wealth management organization based in Overland Park, Kansas. And I hear there are 55 locations all across the U.S. So being that I'm a Kansas girl and that it's based in Kansas, I'm just excited to have Tricia here, even though she doesn't live in Kansas. But Tricia, welcome to Wired to Lead, and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on today. It's a privilege to be able to be here.
Absolutely.
And I am a Kentucky girl by heart. I grew up in Kentucky, moved to Florida shortly after my high school graduation, met and married my husband down there, lived in Georgia. Now I live in Nashville. So definitely a girl of the South. Um, and when I went back into the workforce 11 years ago, joined up with the company Prime Capital Financial, worked here out of Nashville. They're located, she said, over in Overland Park. And a little bit about me as far as I'm married, have two kids, so two adult children. So I find myself recently an empty nester, which has been able to enable me to jump full force into my career. And part of my passion as working in HR is really the people. That's what keeps me doing HR. HR gets a bad rap a lot of times out in the communities and in the workforce, but I like to change that stigma and really focus on the people in HR and find myself now really a champion for young professionals coming in as well. And women getting back into the workforce that have been out for a while. So that's just a little bit about me. My role with HR is, again, all of the people operations working across all of our locations and the 400 plus people and employee relations.
Hey, well, man, there's so many things I want to dive into. But the podcast Wired to Lead is really set up to explore how our minds are wired to lead. And what we're finding out is that all of our experiences, the things that have shaped us in the past, are what impact us the most and impact our leadership abilities and journeys. And so I'm just curious, tell us a little bit about what your leadership journey has looked like.
I started out, had my first management role when I was 19, 20. Found myself managing 30 or 40 people at that time. And it has definitely evolved since those early days. And, even younger than that, found myself very early on, even from middle school and high school, leading different groups and organizations, but then truly getting into a management role at a young age. You try to lead the way that you've seen others lead. And, I had some really early managers that were more that dictator style leadership. And um, you try that early on in your career and you find out that doesn't necessarily always work out very well for you, right? So diving in from that into moving from that into an education role and then moving into where I am at now. That leadership journey has definitely changed over time. My philosophies and views on leadership has changed over time. To now, it's very much I try to lead with grace and empathy and always put yourself into the experiences of others, and found that you have to change. And if you're not willing to grow, then you're going to stay stagnant as a leader. And it's just from some of those early experiences that I've been able to um, move into where I'm at today.
Yeah. I love that you said that, a leader has to be willing to change. And so I'm just curious, was there a defining moment in your leadership that kind of showed you an area where, oh, Tricia needs to change. I need to, um, this didn't work and I need to grow in a certain area?
Absolutely. That was a great question. As I mentioned early in my career, I learned from more of a dictator type manager. Everything had to be done his way. He was just, you couldn't be a minute late. You couldn't, take a break. And it was just a lot of things like that. And so moving into my leadership very early on, it was not a lot of grace if somebody came in late. Didn't really understand because I was so young myself. I didn't understand what it was like to be a mom in the workforce and have sick kids at home. I didn't understand what it was like for a dad, maybe having to leave and go take care of things, or parents wanting to leave and go, to school functions, or somebody older and having doctor's appointments, or younger kids. And it was just that you really don't understand if you haven't been through those situations yourself, then it's really hard to be that leader that understands where other people are coming from. And it wasn't until I had been in that role for a couple of years, and you learn very quickly that not everybody thinks the way that you think, and so you have to adjust yourself. And so I went through that a couple of years of hard management where people don't respond very well to your management and your leadership, and you're like, why don't people like me, or what is happening here? And then so a couple of years into that, I had a manager who was like me, and I started working underneath them and realizing and seeing some of the qualities that I did not like in this manager. I thought, oh my goodness, that's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm doing. And so it really was a hard lesson for me to sit back and think, I don't want to be that person any longer. And then the older you get, and the more experiences that come your way, that's where that empathy and that grace really comes in. And you start to learn that you can't lead people the same. I think of it as parenting. You don't parent, for anybody that's parents, you don't parent your kids the same way. So you can't lead the same way. And you have to really meet people where they are. And once you learn how to do that, that's when you're going to see your world expand, as well as your relationships with your teams and with others that you find yourself surrounded by.
Man, I love how you identified it was a hard thing to look and realize I'm doing the things that my manager is doing and I don't like it. And I think so many leaders would say, well, too bad. This is just what leadership is. And obviously, it's the way it's modeled. So I'm going to stick to my guns. Almost the sense of I don't want to be humble and admit maybe this isn't the right way. And yet I see that in your example that you were able to kind of, I think because you had literally walked in the shoes of those you were leading, in the sense that you recognize that your manager was similar to your style, and man, this doesn't feel good. And so I'm curious, why do you think that step, because I really think that's one of the most important steps in leadership development, starts, is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and see what's really there. Just curious, you say you work with young professionals. What do you think keeps people from being able to just look honestly at their own leadership?
Pride,
Hmm.
that's a big one. Um, too scared to admit failure or that we don't have it all figured out. Those are some of the biggest things I've seen. And then I think for some, it's a sense of entitlement. I got here and now other people are going to have to do what I say. And just from my experiences have found that that just doesn't resonate with people. That's not where they want. And that may have worked years ago. But that's not where our society and where our people are at now. And they expect something different. Emotional intelligence comes into play a lot. That's a big buzzword out there right now, but it really is true. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen with leadership. And again, I had to learn it the hard way. But it really, I think it's just that pride factor would probably be one of the biggest ones, and being too scared to admit failure.
Imagine that when you were 19 and put into a manager role, that there was a little bit of insecurity, like, can I do this? Or will they follow me? And kind of maybe even a little imposter syndrome. And, does that even play a factor in I have to prove myself? And so I need to make sure that these people follow me.
Percent. And I see that every day. And there's still imposter syndrome that comes in. It doesn't matter where you're at in your career, you're always going to face some of those challenges. And it's all in how you learn to embrace them and recognize them and overcome them. But you are spot on.
Yeah. In my work with helping leaders to even rewire to lead, this is one of the areas that comes up a lot, that there's kind of this imposter syndrome. And what happens is that people either overcompensate by trying to gain control and being more of a dictator style, or they undercompensate and they become passive. And neither one works. And really, the goal is to create this sense of mutuality where everyone can respect each other. We're okay. We understand that people make mistakes. And the important part is being able to admit it and to work through it like you did. And so yeah, I love the example of your life in being brave enough to call it what it was and then to make the changes. So I'm curious, kind of the follow-up question then is, what do you think helped you to make those changes? How did you go from being more of a dictator, which sounds way too strong for you. You're way too nice to be a dictator. But to a more authoritarian type leader, to the kind that leads with empathy and connection and relationship.
Some of it was just example, I mean, living through, some of the people that I had managed that I didn't have as much grace for early on, right? I started experiencing some of those circumstances when you become a mom and you're trying to work and you become a mom and you have, things that happen to you. When you have a sick family member or you have different things, you realize that people have life. It's not just about work, and it's that work life balance. And so when you find yourself engrossed in some of those situations, I think that's one thing that helped me. Sometimes getting that hard peer feedback or manager feedback that sets you on a straight and narrow really quickly, right? When you really start to evaluate, and when you start not seeing results, that happens too, right? And so when you look at all of those things to be able to put those into place and really have that self reflection. And for me, it was just a path of, again, working under somebody that definitely did not want to be like, and then seeking out people that I did want to emulate, that I did want to um, try to embrace what they were doing with their teams or learning from them, seeking those mentorship opportunities out there, and really putting in that effort to make that happen. And then you start seeing the results of that, and you start seeing when you show a little empathy and you start really getting to know your teams and things, then you can see where those changes and the things that you've been trying to put into place, you start seeing the action of that. And that makes you want to do more.
It's, you know, we've we've talked about how our our output is shaped by the experiences that we engage. And so this makes perfect sense that you intentionally sought out certain experiences with people that you saw doing it the way you wanted to. You went from watching the way you don't want and deciding, okay, I want to go this direction, and then connecting yourself to them, I think is such a powerful step that leaders can take, and shows this willingness and desire to keep growing and recognizing that people who have gone before us have so much to share. And so you've mentioned a couple of times being a mom and coming back to work. And I think a lot of women are probably listening, and maybe some of them never left work and are just working moms. And maybe there's a mom out there who wants to come back to work but is nervous about how that would play out. But what did you learn through your experience of um, coming into the workplace as a mom?
One, you have to be vulnerable,
Mm.
and you have to be willing to say, "Hey, I'm a mom. My family comes first." That's always a big one. And some people, that's not always a popular opinion, especially when you're trying to move up the ladder. But we have to really find that compromise and that balance. And so that's what I would say is find those times when you're going to be that business professional and find something for yourself. For me, that was my escape. It was exciting for me because my kids were a little bit older and they were excited to see mom get out there and do something. And my daughter loved it when she'd see me dress in a business suit and walk out the door. She's like, that's cool. And, the first, right, right. The first time you get to ride on a company jet or whatever, they think, oh man, that's super cool. So, sometimes you'll get those kind of experiences, and embrace those and share your journey with your family. Let them know what you need. And I think sometimes that's what's hard because we try so hard to focus on being mom at home, but we don't share those work experiences with them. And then we try to be this professional at work and we don't share our home life experiences. And we really have to try to find that healthy balance between the two and be open and honest with the people that we work with, but be open and honest with our family as well. And I think if I can give any advice to any women out there looking to get back in the workforce, find something that you're passionate about, something that you truly want to do and embrace it. Go for it. Don't let that imposter syndrome hold you back because I know what it's like to be 40 something years old and go back into the workforce after being home for 14 years. And you think, oh my goodness, I can't keep up with the young people out there, or I don't know all of the things that might be out there now. Do your homework and don't let that hold you back. Go for it because I've seen so many people reinvent themselves and come back stronger in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, coming back in, raising their families, or even finding themselves, you might have small children and now find yourself in a situation where you have to go back into the workforce. Just don't be scared and don't let anybody hold you back and find your circle. Find your people that are going to support you.
There's two things. The first one, I'm so glad that you mentioned, let your family know what you need. I think so many moms are wired to take care of everyone else except for them. And so coming back to then your second point, finding ways to fill up, because we cannot be a good mom, we cannot be a good leader if we aren't caring for us first. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's the proverbial, put on your mask in the airplane first, because if you pass out, then everyone is going to suffer. So take care of you for sure. So, Tricia, I would imagine that, there are challenges coming back to the workplace as a mom, but I imagine that there are also some strengths. And I'm just curious, what do you think you brought to the workplace as a follow up that you maybe didn't have before? Or what have you seen other moms who come back into the workplace? What strengths do they have that being a mom has actually prepared them really well for working on a team or in the workplace?
Maturity, for one.
Mm,
You come back with a different mindset. A lot of times you come back with a different focus. Now you have little people looking up to you, right? You also sometimes you have to help put those groceries on the table, right? For some others, they go back to work and it's more of a hobby, right? But I think you bring a different level when you've come back. For some, I had some experiences where I was working in the PTA and managing room moms and scheduling big events for the school. Well, all of that, when I came back into the workforce, my first role was that of an office manager, office administrator, and I was planning events for the office. And so I was used to scheduling 300 and 400 people events for the school where my kids went and doing all of that. So that played very nicely in coming back into the workforce and being able to schedule those and know how to do the follow-ups from that and just the little things, but even being able to organize a calendar. Wow, you get really good at that as a mom, right? And juggling all the things and multitasking. So there's so much of that, I think, that people don't realize some of the tasks and things that you learn. One of the biggest things that it drives me crazy is that I hear, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. No, you're not just a stay-at-home mom. There's so much that you are doing on a regular basis. And all of those just traits that you learn are so transferable into a job and into the workforce that I think people overlook very often.
man, even if you think about being a mom, you're wrestling with little humans who are learning and growing in all of the basic human skills. And so, what an amazing training ground for working with grown up humans who are all still learning all of the basic human skills. And I think, yeah, when you mentioned this sense of maturity and a different mindset, there's almost a unique presence about a mom who comes into the workplace because they're used to chaos. They're used to hard things. And it really, in my experience, it's uh, just working with other moms, there's a sense of, oh, it's going to be okay. So I love that. Okay, well, Tricia, you have also indicated just a real drive and passion for young professionals. So, young people who are coming into the workplace for the first time. And so I'm curious, what are you seeing with the generation that's coming into the workplace now? And if there's HR professionals who are watching or listening, what advice would you have for them?
Wow, this generation is amazing. And maybe I'm prejudiced because I have two in this age group, being having a 21 and a 24-year-old. But I have found just the last several years, I work with our intern program and bringing these young professionals in. They're just a dynamic group. And I think they get a bad rap. Teenagers always get a bad rap. College students,
Yep.
they do. They just, but it is so not true. They are so super smart, incredibly talented. And the biggest challenge I see is because they're so used to having their face down into a phone, right? But they are coming in on fire and they are wanting to learn and wanting to grow. But we as leaders have to quickly adapt to that because they are so smart and they have technology at their fingertips. We have to look for new motivating ways to challenge them. And what I am finding where they are coming in smart, they're coming in with technology skills, they're coming in with even leadership qualities occasionally from what they're learning in college, and they're leading a sorority or they're doing different things. but they're not coming in with all of the know-how of how to operate in corporate America or in a job. They don't know some of the things of even how to make a good first impression, or how to write a business email, or um, how to even dress, for success and walk in the door. And so those are some of the things that I find are lacking, that they're not teaching in college. But yet, if you are an HR professional out there, I just encourage you to look to this generation and find a way to connect with them, because they're pretty amazing. And don't be afraid to have younger ones in. I just did the numbers the other day. We've just started a young professionals network at our firm, and 20% of our workforce is under the age of 30. And it has just been incredible to see them come in and see we have about a 50 to 60-year age gap, honestly, from our youngest professional to our oldest professional. And I see the younger ones learning from the older ones, but then I see them huddled up in a group together, and the younger ones are teaching the older ones how to do technology and how to look some things up. And then the older ones are mentoring the other ones on things that they've seen throughout their careers. So it's been a really fun dynamic to be able to see that and grow. But I think that passion just comes from wanting this age group to succeed. And what better way for us to have the legacy of our companies that have been around for a while to continue and grow than to train that next generation to be the next leaders. And you can't do that if you're not willing to put the time in and the effort in to work with them on a daily basis, because they've got some really dang good ideas.
Earlier you talked about how in your life you sought out mentors. And so it makes sense to me now that you're passionate about, now that you've gone through, a lot of your career, now wanting to be that for the young people now. And I just, I led a workshop a couple of months ago, and I do think that the younger generation gets a bad rap, and most of what was expressed was frustration by the older generations. And so I love what you said, what better way to pass on the legacy of your organization, your business, than to invest. And I think sometimes the older generation, it's easier to complain. We're wired to be frustrated, but what a great opportunity for us to lean in to the discomfort of interacting with a generation that does things different, that has different strengths, and learning from them as they learn from us. I just think it's a fabulous initiative that you guys are doing. So what are some of the ways that you facilitate this? What does mentoring in your in under your leadership look like?
A lot of different things. For one, is just being available and being present. And sometimes it comes naturally. It doesn't mean that we're picking up the phone and saying, "Oh, I want you to meet so and so, and we're going to connect, and you're going to have these weekly meetings." Sometimes that's it, right? We do those kind of things too. But I think for us in our organization, we have a lot of great leaders that really do believe in this initiative, and it's just being present on a daily basis, having that open door policy. But a lot of the things that we've put into place, it's not just the more formalized mentorships, but it's creating those opportunities as well for the young people to come in and lead, be in group projects together and sit in those client meetings together, but really giving them the opportunity, asking them for their input and then ideas, but then being willing to coach them and be open and honest with them. We do some career talks, so some AMA career talk sessions with senior professionals, not only just in our organization, but outside of our organization as well in the industry. We put skills workshops together, surveys. Hey, what do you want? What do you want to learn? And so building that out, everything from business etiquette and effective communication to the art of closing a deal. So there's a lot of things that go into that and some intentionality and creating those network opportunities for the young people, even from having a Google, we use Google Workspace. So we've got a Google chat that they can just pop in and say, hey, this came up. Anybody got another idea on this? And just that open communication and having leaders that are also a part of those chat sessions. And really, again, just being intentional about making those connections and letting the young people lead that as well.
Yeah, it sounds so invitational. It's kind of like the leadership is constantly inviting, initiating, creating experiences. And what I love the most is that, in all of my study, I'm learning that our minds, our thinking brain works best when we are relationally connected in safe spaces. And so, really, at its core, that's what your company is doing, is creating safe spaces for relational connection in the context of work. And sometimes people hear the phrase relational or connection, and we automatically think inappropriate relationship. It's like, no, what we're talking about is being human, and as humans, we were made to know that we are accepted, that we belong somewhere, that we get to play a role. And so, as I hear you talk about invitations to lead, invitations to be mentored, invitations to receive feedback, those are all extremely connecting spaces. So, I think that's amazing, and applaud you guys for that. Yeah.
It's been fun. It's I love hanging out with this generation and this age group. And again, maybe it's because my kids are that age and I've been around this whole group since they were young. But I find I learn something new every day from connecting with them, and it's just fun to watch them grow and soar. And there's nothing better than to see somebody else succeed
Yeah.
and watch them get it. A light bulb goes off and watch them win their next big, I'm in the financial services industry. So for them to get that next big client, that they've been working on and see them truly grasp and understand it. It's really exciting.
That is exciting. So, Tricia, as we get ready to kind of shut this down, I just want to ask you, as you are looking at this next season of your leadership, what's your biggest challenge that you're facing now?
Question. I think it's just keeping that momentum going. I finally found, I think, all of the things that I'm working on now and the opportunities that have been given to me. It's really exciting. But then looking ahead, I joke with my team all the time. I said, who wants my job? And they're all like, no, not me. But I'm like, seriously, I'm not going to work forever, right? And as you get to a certain age, you think you're going to have retirement coming on board in the next, 10 to 12 years, something like that, 5 to 10 years. It just depends on the, different circumstances. And I think for me, the biggest thing is making sure that the next generation and my team is ready, and knowing that us as leaders, and that's one thing that I find a lot, people aren't willing to share their knowledge and, lead and train up the next generation. And that's why I'm so fortunate to be blessed with a team of leaders that I work with and get to see mentor this and demonstrate this on a regular basis, not just at my company, but other connections. And that's motivated me to want to make sure that this next generation is ready to lead and pass on our knowledge. And for sometimes we're too afraid to do that because we're too afraid to give up control. We're too afraid that somebody else might do it better than us. Have at it. If you've got a new way of doing it and you're going to do it better than I do it, I'm going to sit back and applaud you for that because I want to see that. I want to be able to retire someday, right? And so I think that's what the biggest challenge is for anybody that finds themselves in, my general age group, is to be able to think about those things, because we want to think of ourselves as invincible, and we don't want to think about what it's going to look like as we transition out. But we have to be willing to pour into these next generations coming up so that we can make those decisions someday.
Absolutely. To me, that type of leader is one who is a well-balanced leader, one who has strengthened their capacity for connection and definition, integration and collaboration, even outside of work. So when a leader has made sure that he or she meets those core needs in themselves outside of work, then it allows them to come in and truly exhibit leadership as I think it was always meant to be. And you've said it multiple times. And I think the legacy you're leaving is that leadership is essentially helping people to rise around you. And I see you doing that. And I would imagine that it's because while you are obviously super passionate about your job, it's not everything for you. And so that's actually a good thing that there's, and you said it earlier, talking about being a mom. It's like find time to be a mom, find time to be a professional and give it all, and then find time to be you. And really, the combination of those three things helps you to be wired to lead at your best. So is that an accurate reflection?
I think so, and it took me a hot minute to get here.
Yeah.
When you're learning and um I've been labeled a workaholic sometimes and sometimes, but sometimes it's the fun side, right? Like I enjoy some of the things that I do, but it really is trying to find that fine balance between them and knowing when to shut this down and turn this part on, and being able to make those connections together, because you can't be an effective leader if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be an effective parent if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not taking care of your relationship with your spouse, your significant other. You're a team. It's a teamwork. Not only is it just a teamwork on your teams at your office environment, but it's a teamwork at home. And like I mentioned earlier, people have to know, your family has to know what you need, and your teams have to know what you need, and you have to be able to find the connection between all of that, because if you're stressed out and you're tired, and you're not going to be effective at home or at work.
Just so true. Well, any parting thoughts that you want to leave with us? Any last words of leadership wisdom?
Goodness. One, just thank you for having me on here today. This has been a fun discussion.
Absolutely.
But I would just say, don't be afraid to be yourself. Especially if you are a female in leadership. And I shared this with somebody the other day, and it came from I was actually in a recruiting dinner with somebody who was a female who was really trying to fit themselves into the man's world, but they were doing it more of trying to fit into the model of maybe acting like one of the guys. And so I would say, be yourself, be authentic to you. Don't try to be somebody else. And if you are a female and you are out there, be authentically female. You can still be a strong female leader, and not have to fit into the man's world. But then you can learn from that. And if you are a man leader, right, be authentically yourself. Don't try to be your person that works next to you or be somebody else, because people see right through that. And I've learned those lessons along the way as well, and that's what I try to share with others, is you can't lead effectively if you're not being true to yourself and building your own personal brand and image of who you want to put out there.
There's a reason we want to be wired to lead as us, not as someone else. So great
Absolutely.
closing point. Thank you so much for being here, Tricia. I just think there's a wealth of knowledge and insight, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You
I really appreciate it.
you are welcome. All right.
Have a great day.
Thank you.